for being here. They are taking time out of their very busy days of filmmaking and all of the other wonderful things that they do, some teaching, some. So thanks for being here. So I just have a quick read real quick to anybody who might be watching. So we have 13 applications that we're reviewing for each of the, well, 3 panelists right now. Hopefully the 4th will be joining. They're going to take turns as they introduce each application, beginning with the number 1 application, moving through to number 14. Let's see. So basically, the panelists are here to kind of give you like what they saw in the application, and hopefully to give you some ideas or some direction in case you are not awarded this grant. So it often helps to listen to several application reviews, not just your own, to understand how panelists are looking at applications and to hear their comments. We are asking all attendees to remain on mute. There is no public comment portion of these review meetings. The panelists are basing their review solely by what they see in the application. If for some reason your application is being reviewed and you hear a misstatement about something that was written in the application, such as a number that is misstated but clearly correct in the application, you may then put a note in the chat and we will bring it to the attention of the panel. Also, you'll notice that we are moving through these applications pretty quickly today, but I want to assure you that the panelists have taken the last 2 weeks to actually review all of the applications. So while it seems short, they definitely have taken their time gone through all of the materials very, very thoroughly and then scored. So we're going to go through each application in the order assigned. You'll be seeing on the screen the treatment while we have our discussion, and then I'll ask the lead reader to introduce the artist or group. Then panelists may weigh in on the discussion and then finalize their scores. At the conclusion of the 13 reviews, we will order the reviews according to score, and I will make the final award. So with that said, Kate's here. Kate, welcome. Our final panelist. Hi, you made it. Great. Okay, so we're going to start with Todd, which is the number 1 lead reader position. So take it away.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. And welcome, everybody. The first project is called The Aliens. It's meant to be an episodic TV series. The substance of the proposal is a TV series discussing how Indians and Pakistanis living in the United States rely on people in their community to deal with culture shock, discrimination, financial difficulties, language barriers, and homesickness. I think the idea itself is very credible and was attractive to me. I could see how this could be has the basis for a quality series. What I wish I could have seen in the project proposal was a great deal more clarity, essentially about every aspect covered in the application. I don't really understand what the project funding situation is. I was unclear how the storyline translates into a film. Is each of the themes, like language barriers or financial difficulties, the subject of an episode? Is it interviews with actual people in the community? Is it dramatized? Is it some combination of those things? It's not clear to me in the proposal which of those it is. Likewise, the budget per episode is quite uncertain. In fact, there's a caveat statement in there about how the costs are dependent on location, size of crew, length of shoot, experience of the cast and crew, etc. And all of those items are under the control of the proposer. And so there shouldn't be anywhere near as much uncertainty. And I think if the proposer took some more time to think through this, we would have had a proposal that was as well done as the idea itself for the project. Same's true for the shooting schedule. It's somewhat generic. And I wish there had been some documentation for the vendors, the crew list, the locations, the hotel nights. Anyway, I would encourage the applicant to come back, spend some time thinking through the details of all aspects of this proposal, and come back and make this proposal again. But those are the reasons that I did not score this proposal very highly.
Okay, do any of the other panelists have any additional comments for the applicant?
I would echo Todd's comments, and I think if the applicant goes to the application, they'll see my comments are in a couple of sentences exactly what Todd said. I think that's the heavy lifting in any of this, is being able to manage your production before you go into production. It's not easy. Nobody's saying it's easy. Why didn't you do this? But it does deserve to be done. And there are many aids out there to help you do that. So I would echo what Todd just said. It's a worthy project, and I think it needs some more prep.
Gotcha. Okay, does anybody else have any comments? Or are we ready to move on?
I'm only in agreement as you, Todd went over this, and I remember reading it, and anything about immigrants to me is worthwhile to be hearing more about. And I just felt like they were a little inexperienced, and my only other thing was the I have down that 30 hotel nights, and I didn't understand 30 hotel nights and using locals. So that was all in their budget.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right. If there are no other comments, are you guys ready to move on? So if you wanted to change your score from the original score, you could do that now. I just want to say that to the panelists. If you don't have any changes, we'll move on to number 3. And Mark, can you please be our lead reader? Oh, you're on mute, Mark. Mark, you're on mute.
When we're sharing screen, I can't see the notes that I have, but I recall this project. I'm having a little difficulty with this one as well, in much the same regard as the first project. I'm unclear as to what the intent is. And I'm not sure what some of the terms mean, and they're not defined in the treatment. Endurance artwork, I went on the assumption that endurance artwork meant something like murals or public space work. I'm not entirely certain what the treatment is telling me. And I believe, since I cannot get to my notes, beautiful, thank you. Looks easy, doesn't it?
Take your time, Mark.
I'm taking everybody else's time. Here we go. What I wrote is, it is described as an episodic music video, and I'm not entirely certain what that means. And I kind of summarized the treatment for myself, and I've read it over and over and over. I'm unclear as to what the piece does. And I said, the treatment is unclear, short on specifics. The video sample didn't help me out, didn't correlate to the project that I was reading on the treatment. I feel it can be improved by giving more details explaining how the project communicates to the community, and in fact, to which community it is attempting to communicate. That's all I can say. I'm completely unclear as to what the project is.
Okay.
So it's difficult to judge how the budget or the schedule lines up with that. But
Okay.
again, like always, try again.
Anyone else have any comments?
Sure. I understand your comments, Mark. I guess, this is a project that's looking for a post-production grant. So they already have a finished product. And the video examples I got, I assumed were the other episodes of the music video that they were doing. It is quirky. And I wasn't quite sure how to evaluate it from the perspective of message and intended audience, as you made a comment. And I don't know whether that's me not being able to relate to this particular artistic statement, or whether it's just not clear. He checks off a lot of boxes, I think. It's a relatively small project, and so I'm not worried so much about crew list or shooting schedule or budget. He's basically paid for this himself. But having said that, I'm not sure that a grant from us makes a difference for getting post-production done on this. I don't know if that was helpful or not, but I was
Okay.
somewhat confused too.
All right. Anyone else have any comments on this one, number 3?
Yeah, I just went through number 3, and I mean, maybe I didn't give it all the breadth it needed, but I did also look at several of the videos and read it through, and I maybe was thinking it's a performance art piece on film. I mean, to me, there's a music video, and I didn't get it as a music video. So when I looked at the other pieces, there's performance art, and maybe is it performance art on film? And I didn't know if this grant or the film commission, if that all connects, or if these pieces should be going to more like of another kind of visual art grant. Does that make sense? Because I didn't connect a storyline. And they didn't connect a story, and it doesn't have to be a story. That I saw it as performance art. That's what I saw, but maybe I saw it more as a visual art piece, like a painter on film. Then yeah, that's mine.
Okay, Melissa, did you have any comments on that one?
No.
Okay. All right. If you want to change your scores, go ahead and do that. If not, we are going to move on to Kate with number 4. And Kate, do you need to see your screen, or should we leave? Is it okay to leave the
No,
treatment
I don't need to look at this. I wrote notes and
Okay.
what should I? Yeah, I mean, I did something else. So this is a documentary called Rocking the Kingdom. And now it looked to me like they were applying for, maybe, I don't know whether it's production and post-production, but I'm not done this before, so maybe I was just unfamiliar of finding that. The project is about, it's actually a story of a local pastor back in the 70s, and a California legislator voting effectively on at the time, the decriminalization of homosexuality in the state of California. And the pastor, this Frida Smith, came forward and I guess in a way brought, the fight to the Capitol steps with throngs of people. And I'm guessing from the background, she was not like some high-end political figure. She was just a local pastor of, I think, a small metropolitan church. And anyway, that's what the project is about. It's her life intertwined with the politics of the day, society of the day in that time frame. And anyway, I felt like I liked it because it was a story I was not familiar with specifically, and local historical facts were all based in Sacramento. The subject matter, even for today, I felt was timely, historically significant, which had sort of a rising storyline that was going to end up impacting a lot of people's lives. So anyway, I thought it was significant, educational for current events, an inspirational piece of how one person could actually make such a huge impact on a vote. And also the filmmaker and the crew are all local. They're very, very experienced. The film, it fulfilled lots of the criteria for the diversity piece and what we're looking for, and all the other pieces about local, participation with cast and crew. And I believe what I saw was they got maybe 50% of their funding already. So I actually had no suggestions, just looking forward to it. That's my take on it.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Mark, you're on mute.
Yeah. My only note is that in the crew list, I don't see the crew list as being all that local. Not a deal breaker, but I would counter what Kate said by saying I dispute the fact that the crew is overwhelmingly local. I don't think there's a deal breaker there, but it does flavor perception of the. I think it's a worthy project. I'm not entirely certain about the schedule and the budget. I have the same questions I think that I had about the first project that I looked at. Was I think the schedule and the budget need to be revisited. I also think that if the director has an overwhelmingly good relationship with the DP, that's every bit a good reason to bring a DP up from LA. No question about it. I think that most of the support, if possible, should be from Sacramento. It's a Sacramento story. That's a good thing.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I rated this very highly, on much the same basis as Kate said. I think it's a very dramatic and a very emotional story, and it is a very appropriate time to have something like this made. At the same time, I didn't see it as overwhelmingly local cast and crew. They, having it be over 75% is sort of the key metric, and I think they sort of hit that. It's not 100%, but it's still on the highest level of the criteria as this group has been asked to measure it.
Okay, thanks. Melissa, do you have any comments on this one?
No, thank you so much for submitting.
You're so cute and happy all the time. Okay, guys, we are moving on then to number 5, and Melissa is going to be introducing this one for us.
Yes, so I'm super excited to provide some feedback on this submission. This submission, and I'm looking both at my notes and the screen back and forth. I really appreciated the submission because it talked about really covering the 45 years of API and Hmong stories and the impact of the Hmong community and influence throughout Sacramento. And 45 years is a really long time to cover all that rich history and heritage. But I also thought about all the different stories that are probably held within our legacy holders and folks that have really contributed to the community that maybe have gone unnoticed or maybe names have not been mentioned. So that got me really excited. They did apply for the production grant, and I thought the budget was really strong. I thought the project narrative was really, really strong, and they had a really solid vendor list. And I personally love the way that they created the shooting format. I thought it was super colorful, really, really easy to read. So I just wanted to give this person that submitted that beautiful feedback. Where I did have a couple of questions and a couple of we could strengthen this a little bit and there were only 2 interns that they were going to be, supporting and only 3 hires, not much hotel or Airbnb usage. And I thought that that wouldn't really contribute to some of the pieces that are part of why we give this production grant to folks. So I just want to highly encourage the submitter next time to think about how they can also take advantage of maybe contracting more folks, increasing the way that they provide internships and hires so that they could be more community centric. But I really thought that the budget and the project narrative was really, really strong. So yeah, and that's how I gave them the score that I provided.
Great, thanks. Anyone else have any comments on this one?
Yeah, I'll just say that I really just enjoy the whole concept of this. And again, it's for me personally, this is something that will educate me on things I didn't really even know about Sacramento. So yeah, I just feel like a lot of these things about immigrants, well, longtime immigrants and people here are part of the beauty of Sacramento. I really, really love the concept. And I also looked at some of the other docuseries and I thought they were fabulous. So anyway, yeah, that's my comment. I mean, I think, I believe that this can happen, that, it's worthwhile. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I like the idea of this too. I remember there was a book that was written a number of years ago. It was called The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down. It's about healthcare in the Hmong community in the Central Valley. It's very dramatic. So there's some reference to, traditional Hmong healing practices because clearly it was a culture clash. And so I can see this could have a lot of power to it. I guess I have a question. I think Melissa hit the nail on the head. Part of the problem with this is that it's sort of small beans relative to some of the other projects. So they're not going to get much credit for 3 local hires and, small number of X and small number of Y. I know that we used to have a break for, under 100,000 and over 100,000, and we don't do that anymore, do we, Jennifer?
No, we've had to simplify the process, and it did, and that is something we can look up. We can look at. Panelists, you'll receive a survey at the end of this with suggestions for future rounds, and so where we take in that kind of feedback is very helpful.
Yeah, I'm just saying it publicly now because I think, there are things that are just the way the program is structured that make it harder for smaller projects to compete effectively. And I think this is a very high quality proposal.
Okay, great. Thanks for that feedback.
And to the submitter, just so you know where I'm coming from, I'm also coming as someone that previously submitted to previous rounds. And so feel free to take all of this information and write as much notes as you can so that when you apply the next round, you know exactly what you need to do to get this funded. Because just like my colleague said, this was a really, really great and strong submission. So thank you.
And attendees who might be an applicant, just wanted to give you the heads up also that I will be sending out a link to this panel discussion so that you can go back and refer to what was said here at the time. Okay, does anybody else have any comments? All right, if we can move on to Todd and number 6.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. So project number 6 is entitled Never Too Late. It's supposed to be a documentary about a 76-year-old woman who happens to be one of the oldest known Americans to undergo gender reassignment surgery. And you know, the intent of the project is to demystify being transgender. It's a compelling idea for a documentary film, particularly given what's going on now in state legislatures across the country. Um, Again, like the last proposal, it's very attractive. Everything's complete. It's a relatively small project. So given the way we evaluate proposals and the criteria that we have, the small number of hotel nights, local hires, local vendors, et cetera, it's going to be hard for a proposal like this to compete. But I think it is a very, it's a very attractive proposal, and I'd love to see it made.
Great. Anyone else have any comments?
I agree. It's a great and timely story. And I'd love to see it get made. My only observation is this project seems to be fully funded in a very serious way. So that's an observation, but it looks like a worthy project. It looks like a great project.
Point.
Okay, any other comments? If there aren't any, we can move on to number 7, and Mark's going to introduce that one for us.
I'm on it. This project is called Hangtown, and it is, if I can refer to my notes, if I can find my notes, it describes itself as a multi-layered look at racial injustice in the Golden State and the whitewashed pioneer mythologies of the Old West, which I think is a compelling subject. I think it's a great topic. And I have no gripe with any of the other rubrics, except for the fact that it seems to be fully funded. It seems to have a production deal with PBS, is currently in production, and that's an observation. I ticked the boxes as fairly as I could, and as I say, it's a compelling story. That's where I am with this.
Okay,
They have a
anybody else?
deal. They have $350,000 to make their movie with.
Any other comments on this one?
I
Yeah,
really, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, Melissa, you go for it.
Sorry, my phone just totally flipped up. I appreciated reading this specific submission, and I love that there was going to be a focus that's talking about the history and how there's still present day impact. So I just want to thank the person that decided to create some focus and attention on the submission. And I look forward to personally watching it once it debuts. So thank you.
I just wanted to address the points that Mark raised. I mean, they still have a heavy load of fundraising to do. They've got a budget of 530,000 and they've raised 391,000. So they still have a bunch of money to raise, and they have some fairly clear plans about how to do it. So I agree with all the positive comments about the quality of the idea, the concept. It's deeply thought through. They're very prepared. They're very experienced. I'm not sure a $10,000 grant is the difference between this film being made and not being made. They have a lot of money to raise. But again, I'm just not sure that our $10,000 is the thing that will make the difference for them.
All right, are there any other comments before we move on?
Yeah, no, only that I just really thought this was really an impressive piece of work. I enjoyed everything that I read, and yeah, yeah, and it's another one. It looks like yeah, congratulations. It looks like it's already on it. I mean, it's on its way. So yeah.
Okay, all right, Kate, we are going to stick with you and move to number 8. I think we've got you on mute, Kate.
Now, this is a short film, and what it seems is the writer and producer was essentially going to make a feature, I believe, from what I read, and I think they're applying for a full production grant. The title's called 38, and it's a fiction film. And the only thing was, I believe it's sci-fi, but I couldn't remember reading that it was actually sci-fi, but that's how I read the city and where it took place and everything. And it's a story about a young man, Adio is the protagonist. He was orphaned, and some of the story takes place. He works for his uncle at a restaurant, I think. And it seems his uncle is involved in the underworld. And I don't believe that Adio knew that, until as an adult working for his uncle, when he and his friend hear a conversation. And I'm not sure if he confronts his uncle, if that's part of the story. But somehow the story folds into that they are going after these mega corporations that are also gangsters, and the corporate gangsters are protected by city police gangsters. And I think this is like a hero story that Adio and his friend take on a cop who is corrupt, and I was trying to just figure out from the treatment in the intro here that it was maybe a coming of age story, a hero's journey. But I felt like the story itself needed a lot more development. There's lots of characters. Good guys and bad guys, to put it simply. But I didn't find enough backstory in the characters. And I like I like the idea in a way, especially if it was, I thought it was sci-fi, but I couldn't find a clear story arc. Like, I couldn't find the actual inciting incident. I know there isn't, I'm not reading a script, but I couldn't get to a place where there's like some peak of where it goes. And I didn't know kind of what Adio was learning or his mission in the treatment, on how the story was being told. And I felt like it did fulfill a lot of the criteria here for local people and what the grant's about and the diversity. I thought possibly they could use some interns, because maybe young people at college or in high school would love to get on board a project like this. But my suggestions have been to, it needs story development, character development. I needed some clarification on if it's a sci-fi future fiction or if it's current. It's a future city, so it doesn't look like it takes place, or it doesn't sound like it takes place in Sacramento. Yeah, I guess I mostly wrote around about wanting to know the inner workings of the character and really flesh out the backstories. And and also that with the amount of what is in here in the characters, I didn't know if they were really realistically looking at their budget was realistic for the amount of people, even though they did lay it out. But yeah, I think I noted also that not enough Sacramento vendors were involved, like equipment wise, craft services. So, yeah, that was how I read it.
All right, thank you. Any other panelists want to make a comment?
I'd like to echo what Kate said. I commend Kate for digging in so much on this application. I hope the filmmakers are in attendance, because what I've heard when I've applied for money or gone to get money for a project or gone to get approval from people, I hear these same things, and I always go away going, they don't understand what I'm trying to do. What I've finally after 107 years figured out is you do need to convince people at every stage of the process what it is you're doing and why they should help you. And I think it's all important. I agree that it seems like a strong project, but I thought that the schedule and the budget were unfocused. I thought the treatment was a little unwieldy. And all of those so-called problems are solvable. These are not insoluble problems. So I concur with whatever it was I said.
The only thing
Anyone
I'd like to add in here is I sort of want to second some of the comments that Kate made, particularly about, I think this is, I wouldn't say sci-fi. I think it's intended to be a thriller. But it doesn't seem to reflect lived experiences of minority and marginalized communities. If there was any intention of that, it did not come across to me, and I do see that as a fundamental aspect of what this program is about: the economic development part, the creative part, the diversity part. And I think all those things meld together, but it was missing the diversity representation part for me.
Anyone else have any other comments? Okay, moving on to Melissa and number 9.
All right. So yes, this person that was submitting for the production grant, and this is their second film, and it's a short film. And there was a focus on both Latinx culture and non-binary identity, with also this emphasis on like parental and family dynamics and structures, and kind of the complexity of identity and spirituality and culture, and how that all influences how we see ourselves, how we see our children, how we see the future for them. And so I appreciated, the artists bringing up all these topics that, impact our lives and how we show up as both creatives and as humans and as people that exist in this world. I thought the vendor list was really strong. They had about 27. So I thought that it'd be great to not only put on the project, but also hire a bunch of contractees. And I love that they were going for their second film, which means that they were brave enough to try it for a second time, So I just want to tell the submitter, great job in doing that. And so for that, I gave them a pretty strong score, and I really appreciated how detailed their project narrative was. I mean, they went into depth, not only in the treatment, but in just the description from the feasibility and the economic standpoint and how it would support Sacramento. So I just want to say bravo for being that detailed and that strong of a writer, and really bringing this conversation to the forefront. So I really enjoyed reading it.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, I scored this the highest of all the applicants, and I sincerely hope that these applicants are on with us right now, because I started out going, oh, okay, another one of fill in the blank. And I dug in and I read it, and the absolute icebreaker for me was their sample video. Absolutely extraordinary. And I think, if I may, I wrote in my comments for this piece, and I quote, In my opinion, this is the strongest piece in this round. I believe it not only can succeed as a film, but also identifies Sacramento as a place that can deliver quality. My first thought when I started to read the treatment was, how are you going to photograph these ideas and thoughts and emotions? When I saw their sample video, these people are filmmakers. That's my opinion. Well done. High marks.
Anyone else?
I love the metaphor for colonialism. I just thought I thought they were very adept at pulling that off. I rated Hangtown higher than this, but in part that has to do with, you know, the obvious aspects of the sheer size of that project versus this and the level of experience. But other than that, I rated this higher than anything else on the list as well. And I really enjoy this. I'd love to see this movie. I think they checked off every box for me.
Yes, same. I definitely tied this one and another one because this one was so good. So good.
Great. Anyone else? All right. Todd, let's move on to 10.
Okay, number 10. It is it's called Holding Space with Dr. Rogers, series of TV episodes. And each episode is dedicated to a specific topic featuring a local community practitioner who's going to provide education about the way their particular set of practices like yoga or art therapy or dance can heal race-based trauma. The focus in terms of audience is the Black community. And in each episode, there's an education piece followed by a practice session. So it's obviously you can do it watching it at home, and it has an aspect that might have appeal for a series that they aspire to make national. I think it's a good idea. I wish I had understood the budget. I couldn't follow the budget at all. So I don't know what that means for the capacity of this group to make the film. That was the one thing that stuck out at me.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I really like the concept, the whole concept. I really like, it's just total community, just total SAC community project. I like that they're working with Access Sacramento. You know what I mean? You know, so they're utilizing, you know, everything. That's all. I just really like the concept. It's something that I would just like watch, and I just like to see happen. I think it'll be very impactful for people. So
Yeah, I really enjoyed that they were also partnering with Access Sacramento and normalizing that you can get kind of almost like telehealth through your everyday practice of being entertained, but also being educated and finding this piece of healing. So I was absolutely for it. I thought the submission was strong, but I did have questions about the budget. But I thought the idea and the way that they conceptually put it together was genius.
All right. Let's move to Mark and number 11. And we're gonna eliminate the, we're not gonna put up the treatment on this one so that Mark, you can see your notes.
Okay. Great, thank you. I'm unclear on the story. And
Can you
oh,
give
yeah,
us like an
sorry.
introduction?
sorry, this is a story at 11. The applicant is Jamie Tafoya. The documentary in the description of the project, they say it's produced for PBS for KVIE. And Jamie Tafoya suffered a stroke, and it's about his journey back as he rebuilds his life. And worthy story. I'm unclear as to the other strains that I see in the treatment about Native American medicine. And I would love to have gotten from the treatment or from the application that this was either an indictment of our health system, a celebration of Native remedies, a personal struggle, or all of these put together. In the treatment, I didn't see that addressed, and I'm making this up from it. A refocusing of that treatment would certainly help the filmmaker and potential funders. But I think it's a very worthwhile story. I would love to see. I would personally love to see the idea of Native remedies in conjunction with so-called Western medicine helping this man back from his stroke. If that's what it is, I didn't see that in the treatment. I would love to see that in the treatment. As it stands, I think it's worth looking at. I didn't understand the schedule or the budget, and I'm not entirely sure that just refocusing the treatment wouldn't resolve all those issues. I would say pretty medium scores, though. I would love to see it produced, but I think it needs another refining pass.
Okay, anybody else have other comments?
Sure. So again, this is a post-production grant. So this film has been made, so I'm not sure there's much opportunity for it to be refocused. Question I have for you, Jennifer, is I remember this proposal when they were asking for a production grant.
Mm-hmm.
And did we fund this in the production grant phase? Is that something that we shouldn't be talking about?
It doesn't matter if they have received a previous grant, because they qualify under the guidelines to receive another one. Awardees can receive 2 grants within 1 calendar year.
Okay.
So I did talk to the filmmaker about, what the guidelines were, and agreed that he could absolutely apply.
Okay. Yeah, I remember this from before when we were actually talking about the subject matter of the film, and I had a similar reaction to Mark's about this. I wasn't really clear what the point of it was.
Anyone else? All right. Kate, let's get you in here for number 12.
Okay, so number 12 is a documentary called The Personal Costs of the Lockdowns. And I believe this is for a production. Anyway, so what it is, what they're headed for are personal stories of how the lockdown, from the pandemic affected their lives socially, financially, emotionally, and mentally. But the treatment, well, and it's all different people, whether they're business people, families, moms with children. There was just older people. There was a whole lots and lots and lots of quotes from all different people. And so the treatment had a lot of quotes in the community describing how they were affected and the lasting effects. That's the issue that I think that's the point of the project, is these lasting effects that have affected their lives. And some of them effects have what some people found was irreversible. So I felt like it's an important documentary and important stories to be told for not only just personal healing and personal debrief, but I feel like that maybe it's part of that hindsight is 2020, because I I'm thinking that where this is coming from is that even though some people maybe got some kind of cash from the government at certain points over their losses, whether they were businesses or some people who lost jobs, the ongoing effect has not been dealt with. And so it's these stories, and what many of us saw was through this was a lot of talking head news and then knee-jerk reactions by leaders. And this could be used as, or maybe is being used as kind of a possibly toward an expose of this. It's actually one of the most significant events in my life, other than 9/11. Yeah, and I felt like it was local Sacramento. I like that it was local Sacramentans and with different life conditions, people in the medical business to business owners. I felt like there needed to be a more detailed budget. I felt like that while the script had like these dialogue pieces, or the treatment had dialogue pieces, I kind of didn't see the planning. I didn't see the planning of how it was going to look or be developed. Is this just the office of faces with people making statements? I mean, what's the plan of it, so that there was some understanding of where the stories begin and what, and if there's any resolve or a call to action. I put maybe this would be a great, I also noted that I thought it would be a great piece for a couple of interns, college interns or high school people involved in journalism could be involved. And I think they didn't have any interns, but they're being kind of sponsored by Inside Sacramento, which is a very well-known publication. And it talked a lot. That's what the background of this is they're publishers. And I really felt there could really use more business, like named businesses, and more of the kind of, I just felt like it would be a great thing for an intern to get involved in. And so I thought it was a worthwhile project that focuses beyond the illness and deaths, because of how we deal with our news, which is once something dies down, we just drop the survivors. That's the end of it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's worthwhile, but I think it needs a lot of work and more specifics. Yeah, I'd like comments from the other people for sure.
Okay, anyone want to provide some comments?
I'll take a crack at it. So, Kate, honestly, I had completely different set of perceptions about this. Completely different. And please correct me if I've misread this. This is not actually a documentary. It is, they're going to hire actors that are going to, so they're going to hire people to tell the stories on the screen, but they're going to be reflective of different communities in Sacramento. So they're not real people. I mean, they're real people, but they're not real people that have experienced what it is they're concerned about. And quite honestly, this struck me, I hate to use this word, but it struck me much more as a propaganda kind of piece directed at trying to show why the actions taken during the pandemic were unconstitutional, and they're not part of the palette of policy choices previously used during health crises. And so I didn't really know how to, what niche to fit this into, but conceptually it seemed wrong to me. And that has nothing to do whether I agree or not with what their proposals are. It just, if there are people out there with stories to tell, then let's have a real documentary.
Okay, anyone else? Any comments?
Yeah, I do feel like the subject matter is going to be important. At some point, we'll probably get more submissions about just over these last 3 years and the impact on just various people and what that looked like, going remote, revamping systems, the closing of different businesses, the accessing of things, fears, the daily anticipation. So I think where the artist was going is in a good place, but I think it could probably be fleshed out a little bit more.
Okay, thank you. All right, Melissa, let's have you move on to number 13, please.
Yeah, sure thing. Alrighty, so do you mind scrolling up to the top to remind me what the name of this one is? I have notes, but I want to make sure I get the name right. Okay, yes, the Loveless Chronicles. Yeah, it was up top. All right, so this artist was submitting for the production grant. My first question as soon as I looked through the application, I saw that they were Stockton based. So I was curious about how much Sacramento exposure, influence, support, contribution was going to happen. But then I did see that they were going to hire 20 local hires. So I was like, oh, maybe that's just the director has a Stockton address, but the production itself, the support itself, the crew and all the people they would hire would be Sacramento based. So I appreciated that. I will say the description and the budget was very minimal, and it didn't really showcase the detail that would help us make a strong decision in supporting funding this. And the budget didn't identify the Sacramento expenditures. I feel like I didn't see a lot of intention. While they did submit the 3 acts for the entire production, there just wasn't a lot of detail into, why this was important and what the overarching, overarching story was meant to do upon completion. But I will say, just reading through the acts, I thought the love story between 2 folks was really beautiful. I will say that oh yeah, and the treatment was also minimal here too. So I just want to encourage the person to apply again next round and to think about how they can expand the ways that their treatment and the description of why this production deserves the full $10,000, and just give us more description about the budget would be helpful, so that we can understand why this love story between queer folks is so important. And I did like the focus on the student aspect of falling in love and between an actor and exploring sexuality and the liberating of the mind around that. But again, just a little more texture would have been great, because I feel like I had to kind of pull stuff out of what they provided rather than them being direct and tell me exactly why this was important. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any other comments on number 13?
As with many other applicants, I think that the schedule and the budget could stand some review. I was struck with this project in the budget, which they termed the expense report. I didn't see any camera equipment. I didn't see any grip and lighting equipment. I didn't see any of the stuff to make the movie. I saw other expenses that are movie related. I think with a little work on the budget and understanding what is actually required to make the movie, what people and stuff is required to make the movie, I think that can tailor the budget. The budget I thought was a little, and I just didn't understand it. But as I said before, all of these problems are solvable.
Okay, anyone else have another comment? All right, let's move on to number 14, our final applicant, and that is Todd.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jennifer. This last project proposal is called The Price of Passage: Afghan Refugees and Sacramento's Transport Challenges. It's a documentary on transportational hurdles faced by an Afghan refugee family in Sacramento. It's a relatively small budget, but directs most of the money to the community, the Afghan refugee community it portrays, both in the film itself and with local vendors. It's a relatively small project. I think the people that are proposing this are capable of making this happen. The experience of the two lead people in the project do give me confidence of that. I think their budget is clear, their schedule is clear, they seem organized. It is somewhat of a tight timeline. I'm hoping that they have tentatively scheduled some of the interviews that they want to do with public officials, because that's always a difficult thing to do. The one issue that I had with this is that there's some confusion in the concept. Is this about Afghan refugees and the hurdles they face? Or is this about the inadequate public transportation system in Sacramento? And it seems like a fairly fundamental choice. I'm not sure that transportation is the most significant barrier that Afghan refugees have when they come here. And I'm not dismissing that it's not important, because I know it is important, but it seems like there's a substance choice here of which direction to go. I would encourage them to come back. I gave it pretty good scores, but I think this is the part that held me back from giving it a higher score.
Thanks, Todd. Anyone else?
Yeah, it's, well, just kind of interesting. I just most recently interviewed someone in front of an audience, a new Afghani refugee, and getting to know him, because I've spent a lot of time with him and actually talked to him since. I spent a lot of time with them to prepare for the interview. I found this especially interesting, because one of the first issues he talked to me about was he can't afford a car. He's looking for a job, has family, can't afford a car because used car, just like what they put, because the used cars are so expensive. Then he talked about the whole issue of going down to get his license at the DMV, you know what I mean? And that was just this whole thing for him to do. And so he's using public transportation, and he thought about getting a bike. He's got 4 kids. He thought about, and his wife, he thought about getting a bike, but it just, anyway, I just felt like that was so interesting that this just popped up, and I've had this conversation with this person, and a lot he discussed was, we don't have a car. My wife's just inside all the time. I don't take them anywhere, this kind of a thing, and what little transportation getting around there is here. So I felt like it was pretty relevant. And I also did want to see more of that woven, or do they need to make a choice? I kind of thought that similarly. But I also thought, again, that the experience of the people doing this, that was, I felt very strongly that it's a worthwhile project. So, and that it could happen.
Okay. Does anybody have any other comments? All right. So does everybody have their final scores in? If you've made changes, they should be completely done. We're going to go and move to the scoring phase. So Diana is going to score them in highest to lowest. And we're just going to pull up and see who the winners of this round of the grant are. So Diana, if you'll do that and share your screen for me so I can see. Okay, let me just make sure. Okay, so the 3 production grants are going to Stuart Harmon, Roberto Feital, and Don Spinella. I need the post-production grant is, okay, this is going to Ted Roth. So congratulations to the winners of this round. Again, I always encourage you to please take the notes that you received in this panel and bring, if you didn't win, bring back a stronger application in the next round, which will open in the fall. Again, we will also be sending the applicants a link to this so that you can learn from either other applications throughout the process. I encourage you to watch the entire panel if you couldn't stay here. So Yeah, and then again, just to reiterate, I'm going to be sending out a survey to the panel. Please provide me your feedback. That's very helpful for me when when our office is creating the next round. That helps inform the process for me. So, and then just thank you guys so much. I appreciate